You are an accomplished broadcaster, both radio and TV.
Yes.
What is your opinion about broadcasting in Nigeria today?
Well, essentially, broadcasting in Nigeria today is an industry that we should be very proud of. I say this not that it's perfect as an industry, but it's an industry we should be perfect with. Taiwo Alimi is known to be a very forthright person. But for broadcasting, you may not have Nigeria. But for broadcasting, you may not have Nigeria. Broadcasting has been on the side of Nigeria. Broadcasting has been on the side of the people. Broadcasting has been on the side of development. Whereas a lot, if you go to print, a lot of damages are done through the print media. And that's what one is saying, but for broadcasting. And therefore, in terms of even content, there's room for improvement, especially those who are doing either drama and so on and so forth. But media in its totality, both print and broadcasting, must really come together now. They are not together. They must come together and perhaps do what I will call prepare what I will call damage control agenda for Nigeria. The only institution that can save Nigeria today is the media, not any other institution. And therefore, room for improvement in broadcasting, and one is very proud that there are still committed professionals in broadcasting in Nigeria, and we must really develop more on this for those that will be following the two of you, because whether you note it, my sister, you need to be training those who will now take over from you.
I still intend to take you up on that area, but you made mention of the damage control agenda, which I find very pleasing. But you're saying the media is the only entity, the only institution right now that can help Nigeria, to get out of this present doldrums. But have you taken into cognizance the fact that ownership tends to dictate both content and direction, and editorial philosophy of many media organizations, for instance? How do you think a federal government-owned media house and a privately owned media house that's to the left in the same camp with a privately owned media house that's on the right, how do you think you can agree on the way forward?
Yes, I agree totally. What you must realize is, when I was Director General Voice of Nigeria, I deliberately and with support of all, I strengthened the broadcasting organizations of Nigeria, BON, which has both the privately owned and publicly owned radio and television together. And together we were pursuing a direction that was right for Nigeria. Quite often, whether the ownership relies on professionals. And if I were to use even myself as an example, you must have courage to be in broadcasting, regardless of the ownership. Therefore, when I was in NTA Channel 10 many years ago, it's a federal government organization. But I anchored an investigative program every night from Monday through Friday, every night, that was critical of the federal military government. And so therefore, it has nothing to do with the ownership, but the professional. The professional must tell the owner, this is what is good for Nigeria. This is what is good for the industry. And you will find out that the industry will grow rapidly, even more, with such a stand where we have professionals with courage.
Now, in your time, and I don't like to use that expression because you're still very active in the media, but when I say in your time, I'm saying when you were in the studio, as we are now, yeah, as a presenter, as a producer, and all of that. And so much emphasis was placed on getting it right. training and retraining, constant training and retraining. This costs a lot. But today, commercialization seems to be the bottom line, the main focus of many media owners. And I'd just like to know if you subscribe to the opinion that some people have advanced about community broadcasting as the way, as the alternative to what we have now, where commercialization seems to dictate a lot of things.
Thank you. Essentially, you have raised a very important issue. I began in 1977 the crusade for privately owned radio and television stations in Nigeria. And with support of God, I then began to use, because when I established Lagos Television, Lagos Weekend Television, it became the first state-owned television station in the Second Republic. Because in 1979, they had taken over all television stations, regional television stations in Nigeria in 1979. So with the birth of Lagos Television, it was the first state-owned television station in that Second Republic. I then began the crusade for 3-tier of broadcasting in Africa. You have the public service broadcasting, you have the commercial broadcasting, and then community broadcasting. I began the crusade in 1980 in the continent. And today, all African countries have community broadcasting system except Nigeria. And one is still in the crusade, that we need to have the 3-tier, because with the community broadcasting, you are now giving access to the rural people, because community broadcasting radio or television must be owned by the people, not to be owned by somebody who's based in Lagos or in Abuja. No, it must be owned by the community. They will decide the program content, and it will be in their indigenous languages, and it will be within an area. One is still pursuing that crusade till today. In fact, since you raised it, I had written to President Yar'Adua since he became president, and he had replied me, and that the NBC is being asked to now draw guidelines for community broadcasting system in Nigeria.
Yeah, where would you place campus radio stations, for instance?
Campus, a university radio station.
University,
it's not a community. It's not a community.
It's a
radio
it's a university community.
No, you are you are using a language that is bad for community broadcasting. Community broadcasting is by the people of the community, and they must broadcast in their indigenous languages. That's the first thing. You only have a campus radio by the campus, by the university or authorities. That's all you have. That's not a community radio. I have corrected NBC. They've accepted that. Go to Cameroon, for instance, an example. They have about 17 community radio stations in the Cameroon, and about 27 to 28 in South Africa. In Cameroon, there is a community radio station that is all female. The female got together. So, and even in the studio, in everywhere, the manager, engineering is a woman. The technicians are women in Cameroon. The announcer, women naturally. And the director in charge, and they have a staff of probably just 11, but they are all women. The woman, they are in charge of the transmitter and everything. So that's the community. And the head of the community management team is a woman, like somebody you would call a chief in the area, but a woman. That is, they now say, okay, we're going to use, all women. And Cameroon succeeded using their 17 community radio stations in their public enlightenment of the stand of Cameroon against Nigeria over Bakassi, and they won. They won the public enlightenment crusade using community radio station.
Would that be because the community radio stations, one would assume, because they have a lot of credibility, because they are not profit focused?
Yes, they're not profit focused. You're right. It's not for profit.
Now, you said that the industry today is one that one should be proud of. The industry has grown since the days of the Nigerian Broadcasting Corporation, where it was the only one. And at that time, the only station to emulate was the BBC. You had to speak that kind of English, and you had to, your Bible was your Daniel Jones. We've come a long way from those days now, haven't we? I'd like you to tell us what you think about the quality that is coming out of these many stations that we have now. Even though you have said that the industry is one that Nigeria should be very proud of.
Yes, that's where I had said earlier that there are areas for improvement. In terms of communication and delivery, which you have rightly mentioned, we have a lot to improve there. Quite a number throughout the country. I have gone around throughout. Those who go on air, they are, as he had pointed out, they are not trained. From NYC, they just put the person on air. He or she cannot pronounce Nigerian names. One was even recently, one was pronouncing Mr. Goody Hebrew as Godi Hebrew, and so on and so forth. So you are right. We still have a lot to do. And that's where I have been given approval, for instance, with the support of NBC that have been putting pressure on me, the zonal director, that Egbon, please start a broadcasting school with you and a few others, Bodala Lade and so on and so forth, coming together to run it is important for them. And in fact, quite a number of proprietors have been phoning in, Egbon, when are you going to start your broadcasting school? So one has, got permission to start that because one is not very happy about the communication we receive, the delivery we receive from both radio and television. You will hear a radio announcer as if the person is in Harlem in America. He's not relating to this environment at all. In fact, the former DG NBC went into one station in Lagos, went to the studio and was standing behind the announcer who was presenting a musical program. After they finished, he said first, he as DG, he didn't understand what he was saying. Now he was wondering what the receivers, the listeners, they wouldn't understand it. That if he was standing by him in the studio and he couldn't understand what he was saying, then it was that bad. And we must not give up, and we must pursue.